Hi everyone, welcome to Catching Up with PWI. I hope I come up with a better name than that by the time this goes out. I am Pro Wrestling Illustrated Editor-in-Chief Kevin McElvaney, and with me, one of our newest contributors, contributing writer, Karen Peterson.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, this is great. We're in the hotel, adjacent to the hotel conference area, because we did not rent the hotel conference area. You have to pay money for that.
We're in the very scenic lobby of the Newark Hilton.
Yes. It is very nice. It's very nice here. But yeah, it's been an exciting week.
It's been a week.
It has been a week. So talk a little bit about what has brought you here to this spot in Newark, because normally you're in Florida.
Yeah, normally I don't hang out in Newark, especially near the airport. Right. For those who don't know me, my name is Karen Peterson. I am a contributing writer at Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and I came up to the tri-state area for New Japan Pro Wrestling's Rumble on 44th Street, and the night before, Rumble on 44th Street. So on top of this, wonderful little mini vacation to go see New Japan, we've had a big week.
Yeah.
The women's 150 has been released digitally.
Yeah.
The conversations have begun.
They sure
The
have.
debates are hot. The hot takes are coming in left and right.
Yes. And so, there's a lot of good discussion.
Yes, absolutely.
Most of it has been positive. There's been a lot of what is a stardom type talk.
Yeah.
And some of it's more respectful than others.
Yes.
For the most part, anybody in good faith doing it at least, who's a reader of the magazine, knows what stardom is.
Yeah.
Because we've been covering stardom more over the last couple of years. But it's okay to also not know
Absolutely.
what stardom is. And you've done a lot of work in helping to get the word about wrestling around the world out there, and stardom is definitely a huge part of that.
I mean, you might say I'm a little invested, as it were. One of the things that I've loved about covering Stardom for this last year, and getting back into women's wrestling, because I was really into it when the Mae Young Classics happened back in 2017, 2018, right. But then it kind of fell to the wayside, as women's wrestling does sometimes. But as the first-time participant on the committee to do this issue, I had a great time. It was a great learning experience, and it's one of those things where I remember every year that when the 500 drops, it's very heavily contested. There's a lot of concerned parties are involved, but so I was a bit concerned. I was a little worried. Yeah. Might say I had a little bit of an ulcer going on. Oh. Because everyone's like, "Oh, rip your mentions. It was nice knowing you," but I actually had just arrived here on Thursday. Right. I was coming from the airport to here at 10 o'clock when the list dropped.
Right.
So I was actually pleasantly surprised and very thankful. There's been an exceptional outpouring of support from everyone. Like people who, as you said, people who are, have a wider scope of the wrestling that they consume weren't surprised. They were actually pleasantly surprised, not just by the number one, but the top 10, the diversity in the top 10. And for the most part, it's okay not to know XYZ promotion or XYZ wrestler. Right. But I think one of the cool things about an issue like the 150, the women's 150, is that it gives people the opportunity to learn. Yeah. It's kind of like your little cheat code, when I was a kid, strategy guides were a big thing for video games. So it's like if you want a way to dip your toe in the water, or you hear this name or this name or this name, the 150 issue is an opportunity to it's a catalog of all the people you should be keeping your eye on.
Right. And I think PWI has served as that for a long time for people. And I think certainly before the internet, when I was growing up reading PWI and related magazines, it was, I've never heard of Hot Rod Eddie Gilbert before, or I've never heard of Brian Christopher. I'm naming people from the same region as if they didn't cover other stuff. But I would then keep an eye out for them, and sometimes they would show up in WCW or WWF, which I could watch, or sometimes they would be on one of those cheap video bootleg compilations that would be sold in a Kmart somehow, where it was questionable who actually owned the match. One of those. But there's a lot of good stuff, and that's what PWI was for me years ago. Now, obviously, now we have the internet and we have greater accessibility to all of the matches and to learn about people. Independent of a wrestling magazine, but the reality is that there's even more wrestling out there to parse through, and nobody can reasonably watch and keep up with all of it.
No, absolutely not.
So, like, as a group, we try to come together, and the women's 150 and the 500 are two examples of how we try to do that. But that's as far as I'm concerned, that's what it is. It's for like the enterprising wrestling fan who is busy and needs to be like, okay, just map it out for me. So. Yeah, that's the long and short of it. But I think this year's 150 kind of did that.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of different wrestling styles and many different promotions, countries represented. There's a concerted effort to make sure we're getting people in there who deserve to be in there. But I mean, ultimately, there's people who deserve it. It's not just like, okay, we need X amount of people from Australia and X amount of people from
Correct.
Canada. And like, but I do think it was good in that regard. Patting ourselves on the back here. But yeah, like, well, let's talk a little bit about like your wheelhouse then, because
My wheelhouse, all right.
yeah. So Stardom, obviously, again, a fan. You did a lot of work for this issue. You wrote bios. You were on the committee. You interviewed Shuri, the World of Stardom champion. That's a
I keep humble bragging about it, and people tell me to stop playing down the fact that I got to interview this year's number one in a history-making situation.
I mean, it also, you were the most qualified person for the job, and like, I don't even know if it explicitly says this in the magazine, but like, you conducted the interview in Japanese and you translated it into English. Like, it was like, that's a big thing. Normally we would have intermediaries doing all this, and
Yeah, I don't think it's mentioned in the lead into the hot seat.
I probably should have edited that.
This
is the humble bragging.
It's not that, well, like, I want to say it's not that big of a deal, but it's kind of a big deal.
It is.
But we could figure out a way to tie it in somehow. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
well, we're letting people know.
We're letting people know now. Yeah.
Just clumsily, just like ham-fisted into the next issue. Like, by the way, this interview was conducted in Japanese.
That's what's from the desk of the editor. That's all on you, man.
That's actually true. That is where we're doing the corrections. Well, I just gave myself work to do.
That's your homework. Add it to the list.
For real. But yeah, I mean, it's not just Shuri. She's in the number one spot, and we've never had. We can't say we haven't had a Joshi wrestler, but like Asuka was former wrestler in Japan, and then by that point very much in the WWE system.
Yes.
So like she was an American wrestler, like quote unquote, for that. Those purposes.
In that grading period, she was considered a domestic wrestler as opposed to an international wrestler because of the location of her promotion.
Well, yeah, exactly. So this is historic for that reason, but with Shuri being the first active women's wrestler in Japan to top this list. But we had two other wrestlers from Stardom in the top 10. We have an additional two in the top 20, I believe, with Azumi and Utami.
Yes, and I know somewhere in the top 30 we've got Mayu Iwatani and Tam Nakano, Miyu Yamashita's on there. Mm-hmm. It's been a good year for Joshi. Shoko Nakajima's the big kaiju herself. She's in there too.
And we should clarify the Miyu and Shoko are both from Tokyo Joshi Pro.
Correct.
It's not just one promotion over there.
The two promotions that are at the top of the conversation, largely due to either with Stardom working with New Japan, or in the case of Tokyo Joshi Pro, not only working with DDT and Pro Wrestling Noah under their parent company. That's the company that sends a lot of their talent to AEW, and that's how they gained notoriety in the domestic mainstream here in the States.
Yeah. And then also a lot of participation on the independent circuit, particularly not just Tokyo Joshi Pro, but some of the other promotions that are not like, we'll say, the big two.
Yeah.
You know, just people traveling, and then of course like Jungle Kiana's return to the ring in the U.S.
Yeah.
this year, which is a big deal.
I was actually at this hotel last month because I came to see Garden City Pro Wrestling, where she wrestled Janai Kai and did a fantastic job.
Yeah, it's exciting times. Like if someone's watching this and they're a little bit skeptical of all this, like, okay, Stardom is still, like, they might look at it as like, it's not an indie by any definition because it has a parent company.
Yeah.
Its wrestlers are contracted, but like not. I mean, they have freelancers come in, but it is largely contracted wrestlers. They train their own people as well. But why is this big league? Why? How can a Stardom wrestler be number one over a WWE wrestler or an AEW wrestler?
For me, when we talked about the legacy of Shuri and the journey she's had, last year she was, I think, number 71.
Or that was the previous.
Oh,
she was 7.
Yeah, 2 years ago she was like 71, and then she jumped to number 7 last year after winning Stardom's 5-star Grand Prix. And in that grading period, she had the first in a very, very, very long time of a 5-star rated 43-minute time limit draw against Utami Hayashishita for the World of Stardom Championship. That had set the international wrestling community on fire. Wrestlers and fans alike were just raving about that match. If you ever want to know why Shuri got to number 1, that's like a match in like a that you must see for her.
And it was the previous evaluation period, but it set the momentum.
Yes,
to allow her to-
it boosted. It put her on a lot of people's radars that she wasn't on there before, and winning the 5-star immediately after she won the 5-star, the new grading period started. And during that time, it's the first couple months between October to the end of December.
Right.
That was her journey to the Stardom's largest show of the year, Dream Queendom, where she and Utami revisited that match as champion and challenger once more with a different outcome, Shuri winning the championship. We step into this year, she relinquishes the SWA championship that she was defending during that time because she had several notable defenses as that champion before winning the World of Stardom championship.
And she was defending the Grand Prix victory with some of those matches, right?
Yeah,
she was putting that title.
It's kind of like the G1 for those who watch New Japan. The winner of that tournament gets a contract that is basically like they're punching their ticket to WrestleMania. It's like winning the Rumble, but you have to have Money in the Bank briefcase. You got to hang on to it. Yeah. So during the Grand Prix, because it's a round robin tournament, Shuri did incur some losses. And as a result, she said, well, you know what? I've got a belt to defend and I've got my rights certificate. I'm going to put them both together. If you can beat me, you can take the belt and you can take my spot in the main event at the biggest show of the year. Very tall order. So of course it was a very hot ticket to be able to wrestle Shuri in the last 3 months of last year, at the beginning of her grading period. Then winning the championship starting 2022, she relinquished that belt and then focused entirely on defending her World of Stardom championship. Notable challenges included Risa Sera from Prominence, Julia, who was the leader of the faction in Stardom that brought Shuri in to Stardom mainstream full-time, Mayu Iwatani, all outstanding matches. Excuse me. She's getting ready to defend the belt next week against Maiko, who's one of her losses in the 5-star this year.
Right.
And then in a couple of weeks, she and Julia will have a little bit of a teaser at Historic Crossover. Yes. When they tag against each other as challenger and champion with Tom Lawler and Zack Sabre Jr.
It's quite a match.
It's the fact that Tom Lawler loves Stardom and talks so highly about it, and knowing that him and Shuri are tagging together, it's like that. When that match was announced, that was one of the things I was most excited about.
And it makes a lot of sense that he does. I mean, it's like just such high caliber wrestling, like from an in-ring standpoint, from wrestling in sport standpoint, and then also like he and Shuri, both ex-MMA.
Yep.
And like legitimate, just tough badasses.
Yeah.
And they're gonna have, Julia and Zack Sabre Jr. are gonna have their hands full, but of course they're two world-class wrestlers in their own right. man, there's a lot coming up. It's exciting. We just went to a show last night. We were both there.
We did.
And you were at a show the night before with our own Candice Cordelia, Face Turn host and contributing writer for PWI. So could you talk a little bit about those shows?
Oh, so we went to the night before. I keep calling it the night before Elm Street. It's not Elm Street. It's 44th Street, the Rumble on 44th. Candice got to experience her first New Japan show.
Yeah.
And for me, as a longtime New Japan, longtime meaning the last 5 years, watching someone experience New Japan for the first time
In person, yeah.
like sitting there like side by side and she was getting excited and that made me more excited.
Right.
And it was just like we just kept like building on each other the entire time.
Right.
And I loved that she, like, from what I've gathered, she had a great time.
Oh yeah, she's still talking about it.
Good, I'm glad.
And she was like equally excited, like, oh, you get to go to New Japan tonight. And I was like, yeah, New Japan's great.
I'm telling you, next year she's gonna walk into the 500 ranking meeting and be like, guys, let me tell you, I've got plans. Here's my list. She's gonna be a contender in the discussion to be like, I got this. Let me fill you in.
Cleaner, I got this. There's, it's worth noting too. Like, I mean, you know, she has awareness of New Japan and like has watched programming and it's like she's completely new to it, but like this was her first chance to really see it
Live.
in person and like, yeah, full show there, front and center, like literally front and center. You were in the first row.
I don't even know how that happened. That's a discussion for another time, another day.
And then it's funny too. Like I just made the connection the night before Christmas.
Yeah.
Usually, but I'm like, why is it? And then Rumble on 44th Street is Miracle on 34th, and I just put the two together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I eventually get things.
It's all good.
That's why I'm the editor. Because everyone writes the things, and eventually I get to them. Good Lord. What's the Christmas? But I separately realized the Miracle on 34th. Anyway, I'm an idiot. But last night we went to the Rumble on 44th Street show.
Sure
in Times
did.
Square. That was awesome. I had a great view from the balcony and just peering over at everything, like literal bird's eye view. Such a good show. And we got to like meet some people from the interwebs.
Yeah.
That we had not before.
Well, we got to meet up with Kayla and Alex from Church of Joshi, who helped us with the big reveal of the top 10
Yeah.
earlier this week.
Yeah, it's like just a couple days ago.
Finally getting to meet them in person. It was like, oh, you're really a real person. You're not. I'm not being catfished by.
Right. You and I had not met in person.
No, this was our first. Yeah. This was our first meeting as well.
And there are still plenty of people who contribute to PWI who have not met because that's the beautiful thing about right now is people can contribute from anywhere. You don't really have to be able to visit the office or anything like that. And I mean, even for a while, people have been like going back into the early to mid '90s. People were sending stuff by like fax and email.
Oh
and
my
stuff
gosh!
Like that. But there's a funny story actually. Harry Burkett, senior writer, has been with the magazine since '97, something like that. But he talked about in one of his columns how when he first started writing for PWI and the related magazines, he couldn't do it immediately because he had to have a modem to be able to send his assignments in.
Oh God!
And it was like, and he needed to be able to save up for a modem.
Oh no!
So, and now he's our longest tenured writer. He was actually editor in chief back when it was like a 3-person editor team, and there was one person between us, but he was the person I was working with most directly when I started, and then Stu Sachs, publisher. But yeah, it all started with him not being able to afford
a modem.
But then he
Were you a dial-up kid?
Yeah.
I was a dial-up kid too.
I has a 14.4 modem, and then eventually upgraded to 56K. I'm like, I can download a whole song in like 4 minutes if it's a short song? What?
I remember when I was in college, my freshman year was when they finally installed LAN cables into the dormitory, and it was big to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the digital age has really made things a lot easier. I mean, case in point, we're being able to record this and
yeah, we would have had a huge bulky video camera
with a VHS tape.
Yeah. I think depending, it might have been like a mini DV cam.
One of those little ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's I'm really proud of this issue. And the way I look at it is that it's kind of like like you remember Reader's Digest, right? Like,
is this turning into one of those? Remember when?
Do you remember way back when, Kevin? No, but it's like that kind of format where it gives you a little bit of a teaser of everything. Yeah. So if you're curious about XYZ promotion or what you can learn about like the top 10 in particular. They have those individual bios. Yeah. There's the Shuri interview. There's there is the remaining 150 with all the short bios, but then there's also like the scouting reports where it's like, if you're curious about Stardom, you can learn why Stardom is great, or if you're curious about Australian wrestling, because I think was it Ella J did something on Australian wrestling. So it's like one of those things that's like it's kind of like a teaser, like you like a catalog. You just flick through it and you're like, oh well, let me check this out. Let me check out MCW. Let me check out Rev Pro UK. Let me check out RCW in Spain. Like there's like so many. It's a great, as a former teacher, it's a great learning tool. It gives you the opportunity to pick everything up and be like, all right, well, I don't know why I've got beef with this person. Let me find out why. Let me educate myself, because it's a resource.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the best things about it. And the scouting report thing in particular is not something we usually do in the women's 150 issue. Like we'll kind of vary what the other stuff in that issue was. Like 2 years ago, which was my first in the editor's chair, it was just kind of other feature stories. They weren't especially women's wrestling focused. In fact, I think it was all guys, because it was like, oh, okay, well, there's the women's section. We don't want to look like we're like favoring anybody. And then last year it was more like broad topics, like the ROH women's division being rebuilt and the Empower event. Like, so we're not focusing too much on one person from the list, because the list is the list. And then this year, it was actually Kristen and Ashley's idea to do some kind of like look at wrestling around the world, and that gradually morphed into, we used to do these scouting reports, and it's not the exact same format, but it mimics it. It's the same heading. It's the same, like you have the analysis section, you have the more like stats, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have a bunch in there. I mean, like really as far as places where wrestling is a big established thing, the only place that doesn't have a scouting report is Canada, but then Pat LaPrade has his Coast to Coast column, which focuses this time specifically on women wrestlers in Canada. It's cool. I mean, I wrote a couple of them. I wrote one on Europe. I wrote one on Mexico. And then you wrote about Stardom and Tokyo Joshi Pro.
I did.
On top of the bio work and on top of interviewing Shuri in Japanese. Did we mention, again, it was in Japanese.
I was so nervous because the only other interview I've done that was involving besides this is you're technically one of my first 5 person-to-person interviews. So it's with my very first one was Yuna Manase from Gambare Pro.
Oh, she's great.
And that was for the Cyber Fight Festival back in June. Mm-hmm. And then, I was able to talk to Kevin Kelly, Rocky Romero, and then Shuri. But Shuri was the first interview I've done that was entirely in Japanese. And it was 35 minutes. And I was just sweating the entire time. I was so nervous. Because I wanted to do you guys proud. I wanted to put together something that, she's done other interviews in the past, but I wanted something that celebrated her career, but also celebrated, women's wrestling and celebrated the issue. And for those who are curious about Shuri's journey, or why she's number one, make the time, read the article. And because she talks about her journey, and especially,
I'm like, of course we're going to say buy the magazine, but it's all in the magazine.
But literally buy the magazine. I don't be like, hey, I got to go to the plan. But no, but the thing is that she shared parts of her life that she doesn't normally share with English-speaking media, and that's why it was really important to be able to be a part of that. So for me, it's that's something I'm going to hold dear for a very, very, very long time.